This is the video solution of our first formative assessment on this topic, evaluating algebraic expressions. And in the first problem, we have three expressions, and all we have to do is evaluate them. These are not algebraic expressions, these are numerical expressions. There are no variables. And so we just use the order of operations in order to figure out what these expressions ultimately simplify to. The first one, and this is the way I like to think about all order of operations problems. Look at the problem and think about how many operations there are. There's a multiplication and a subtraction in this problem. You only have two, so you just have to do them in the correct order, and you recall the order of operations. I like to remember those as parentheses and grouping, exponents and roots, multiplication and division from left to right, adding and subtracting from left to right. Okay, so it's a little more complicated than the typical mnemonic device that we use. But anyways, according to this order, we're going to multiply and then we're going to subtract. So let me do that. 5 minus, and 4 times 2, that's 8. Again, I also, every time I add a line to my work, I'm making an equivalent expression. I didn't just do 8 and then somewhere else like write a 5 and subtract. I rewrite the entire expression, and it's a little bit simpler. Now there's only one operation to do. And 5 minus 8 is negative 3. Now, this one is a little more challenging. And again, how many operations do you see? There's an addition, a multiplication. You should recognize this as a multiplication, and then a subtraction. And you have to choose which one to do first. Well, I have a pet peeve. Parentheses and grouping are not actually operations. It's a way that we force these operations to happen in a different order. So I do have to, a lot of students, they'll say, oh, do the parentheses. Well, we look inside the parentheses and figure out what operation to do first. It's subtraction. We don't do the parentheses. We look inside and we see that there's a subtraction inside those parentheses, and only a subtraction. If there were more than one operation inside of these parentheses, we'd have to pick which one to do first, but we're lucky, it's just one operation. So I'm going to do the 5 minus 8 inside these parentheses. And again, I write my entire expression all over again in a little bit of a simpler form. Now I have a multiplication and an addition, two operations. Once again, multiply first and then add. So 3 times negative 3, that's negative 9. Remember the convention of putting parentheses around the negative numbers when we're adding them. And then this becomes 1 plus negative 9. That's our last operation, and that's negative 8. And the last expression we have is even more complicated. But again, it's the same idea here. We're going to notice, first of all, brackets like these is just another way of grouping. Right? There's a lot of different ways we can group operations. So we have some brackets here. But again, at first I'm just going to look for all the operations. I have subtraction, addition, exponentiation, and another exponentiation. So I have 4 operations. Now, normally I would go about doing the exponents first, but I got to consider the grouping. So what I like to do is first consider what's inside those brackets. And look, we're going to do this entire expression first, but there's 3 operations in there. There's a subtraction, addition, and an exponent. So I look again to figure out what I'm going to do first. And look, I got more grouping inside. Let me go inside there. And there it is, 1 plus 1. That's my first operation, addition. So let me do that. 1 minus, that's a 2 in there now. Square it, close my bracket, and I'm going to square again. There, it's a little bit simpler. Again, I have some grouping, so I look inside that first group and I see there's two operations, a subtraction and an exponent. Well, I'm going to do the exponent first because that appears higher in my order. So 1, 2 to the second power, that's 4. So this is a 1 minus 4 to the second power. Again, notice I'm rewriting, every line contains an equivalent expression. Now I'm just down to two operations, subtraction and exponents. And normally we do the exponent first, but I've grouped that subtraction to force it to happen before the exponentiation. 1 minus 4, negative 3. Square that. That's my last operation, and that's a negative 3 times a negative 3, which gives me a positive 9. And that is the solution to the first problem.